The space station floated in the darkness between three different star systems. It was massive, it was old, and it was one of the most important places in the entire galaxy. They called it Nexus 7, and it was home to the Interstellar Combat Academy. For over 200 years, the best warriors from dozens of alien species had trained here. They learned to fight, they learned to lead, they learned to survive in a universe that was often cruel and always dangerous. Commander Vexthal stood at the front of Training Hall 9. He was a Kethari, a species known throughout the galaxy for their strength and their love of battle. He stood nearly 8 feet tall. His skin was covered in scales as black as the void of space. 4 glowing orange eyes sat in his skull, and they missed nothing. His claws were long enough to tear through metal, and his tail was thick enough to break bones. He looked at his new class of students and felt something close to pride. They came from 17 different species. All of them were elite. All of them had been chosen from millions of candidates on their homeworlds. They were the best of the best. There was Crixal, a young Kethari male who showed great promise with the plasma lance. There was Sithna, a Vryn female whose scales changed color with her mood and whose venom could kill in seconds. There was Brongar, a massive Gorvan who stood even taller than Vexthal himself. His species had skin like stone and strength beyond measure. And then there was the human. Vexthal's 4 eyes moved to the back of the training hall. The human sat alone. The desks around him were empty. None of the other cadets wanted to sit near him. They looked at him like he was a mistake, like someone had made an error in the paperwork. His name was Marcus Cole. He was an exchange cadet from a small blue planet called Earth. The humans had only made contact with the galactic community 15 years ago. They were new. They were unknown. And to most species in the galaxy, they were not impressive. Marcus was not tall. He was shorter than almost every other cadet in the room. He had no claws. He had no fangs. He had no scales or armor or shell. His skin was soft and thin. It could be cut by almost anything. He had no venom, no poison, no natural weapons of any kind. To the other cadets, he looked like prey. Crixal leaned toward Sithna and whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. Why did they send food to train with predators? Laughter rippled through the hall. It was not kind laughter. It was the sound of beings who thought they were better, who thought they were stronger, who thought the human was a joke. Marcus did not react. He sat in his chair with his hands folded on his desk. His eyes moved slowly across the room, watching everything, watching everyone. He did not look angry. He did not look scared. He just watched. This bothered Vexthal more than he wanted to admit. He had seen many cadets come through his academy. Some arrived with fire in their eyes, eager to prove themselves. Some arrived with fear, unsure if they belonged. Some arrived with arrogance, convinced they were already the best. But he had never seen a cadet arrive with such a stillness, such quiet observation. It was like the human was studying them, learning them, taking notes inside his head. Over the following weeks, this pattern continued. The cadets trained in combat. They practiced with weapons. They ran simulations and fought in the training pits. And Marcus Cole did everything that was asked of him. He was not the strongest, not even close. Brongar could lift weights that Marcus could not even move. He was not the fastest. Sithna could cross the training hall in the blink of an eye. He was not the most skilled with weapons. Crixal could hit targets that Marcus would miss. But he never gave up. He never complained. And he never stopped watching. The other cadets grew to ignore him. He was background noise. He was the weak link that would eventually be sent home. They stopped bothering to mock him because it was no longer interesting. He was simply there, like a piece of furniture. Marcus used this to his advantage. He watched how Crixal held his plasma lance. He watched how Sithna moved her body before she struck. He watched how Brongar planted his feet when he swung his graviton hammer. He watched the instructors. He watched the training drones. He watched everything. And at night, alone in his small quarters, he thought about what he had seen. Humans were different from these aliens. That was true. But different did not mean weak. Marcus knew something that his classmates did not understand. He knew that his species had not survived for 2 million years by being the strongest or the fastest or the deadliest. They had survived by being clever, by being adaptable, by looking at the world around them and asking one simple question: how can I use this? A rock becomes a hammer. A stick becomes a spear. Fire becomes a tool. The things that other species ignored, humans learned to use. This was the secret that had carried his people from caves to cities to the stars themselves. So Marcus watched and learned and waited. 3 months into the training cycle, Commander Vexthal made an announcement that would change everything. The quarterly weapon proficiency examination will take place in 7 days, he said. His deep voice echoed through Training Hall 9. Each cadet will demonstrate mastery of their chosen weapon. This examination is not optional. Failure will result in immediate expulsion from the academy. The cadets murmured with excitement. This was their chance to show what they could do, to prove their worth, to bring honor to their species and their homeworlds. Marcus sat quietly at the back of the room. His face showed nothing, but inside his mind wheels were turning. He had a problem, a serious one. His combat equipment had never arrived. A shipping error had left his gear stranded on a cargo vessel 3 star systems away. He had reported this to the administration office weeks ago, but nothing had been done. The academy staff did not care much about the human cadet. He was not important enough to worry about. This meant that when the examination came, Marcus would have nothing. No weapon, no armor. Nothing but the clothes on his back and whatever he could find in the training hall. Any other cadet might have panicked. Any other cadet might have begged for more time or asked to be excused from the test. But Marcus Cole was not any other cadet. He was human. And humans had been solving impossible problems since before these aliens had learned to make fire. He looked around Training Hall 9 with new eyes. He looked at the desks, the chairs, the lights, the walls, the floor, and slowly a small smile crossed his face. Everything was a weapon. You just had to know how to use it. The day of the examination arrived like a storm. The air inside Training Hall 9 felt electric. Every cadet had prepared for this moment. Every cadet had polished their weapons and practiced their techniques. This was their chance to shine. Commander Vexthal stood on the elevated platform at the front of the hall. His 4 orange eyes swept across the assembled cadets. Behind him, 3 senior instructors sat at a long table. They held data pads and scoring devices. They would judge each performance with cold precision. Today you prove yourselves, Vexthal announced. His voice was like thunder rolling across mountains. Today you show us why you deserve to be here. Today you fight. The cadets responded with a unified roar. Fists struck chests. Tails slammed against the floor. Claws clicked together in salute. The noise was deafening. At the back of the hall, Marcus Cole stood in silence. He wore his standard training uniform. His hands were empty. His locker remained bare. The examination began. First came Brongar, the massive Gurvan. He walked to the center of the hall carrying a graviton hammer. The weapon was as long as Marcus was tall. Its head glowed with contained gravitational energy. One swing could crush a combat vehicle into scrap metal. Brongar demonstrated his technique against a series of armored targets. Each swing was slow but unstoppable. The targets exploded on impact. Metal fragments scattered across the floor. The other cadets cheered. The instructors nodded with approval. Next came Scythena, the Vryn female. Her scales had shifted to a deep crimson, showing her excitement and aggression. She carried a neurotoxin whip, a weapon unique to her species. The thin cord was coated with venom that could paralyze any known creature in seconds. She moved like water, like smoke, like something that was everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Her whip cracked through the air and struck targets with perfect accuracy. Each hit left behind traces of deadly poison. The instructors marked high scores on their data pads. One by one, the cadets demonstrated their weapons. Crixel showed his skill with the plasma lance, cutting through reinforced barriers like they were made of paper. A cadet from the Morthic species displayed her sonic blades, weapons that vibrated at frequencies that could shatter bone. A Teleran cadet demonstrated his ice projector, freezing targets solid in heartbeats. Each demonstration was impressive. Each cadet showed why they had earned their place at the academy. The instructors recorded scores. Commander Vexthal watched with his arms crossed over his chest. The list of names grew shorter. The hall grew quieter. And Marcus Cole remained at the back, waiting. Finally, there was only one name left. Cadet Cole, Vexthal called out. Human, step forward. The hall fell completely silent. Every eye, every optical sensor, every sensory organ turned toward the back of the room. They watched the human walk forward. They watched his empty hands. They looked for a weapon and saw nothing. Whispers began immediately. Where is his weapon? Did he forget it? This is going to be embarrassing. Marcus walked to the center of the hall and stopped. He stood at attention, his back straight, his eyes forward. He said nothing. Vexthal studied him with all four eyes. The commander had seen cadets fail before. He had seen them break under pressure. He had seen them make excuses and beg for mercy. But there was something different about this human, something that made Vexthal curious. Cadet Cole, the commander said slowly. Where is your weapon? Marcus spoke clearly. My equipment was lost in transit, sir. A shipping error. My combat gear is currently 3 star systems away. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some cadets laughed. Others shook their heads with pity. Crixall called out from the assembly. Send him home, Commander. This is pathetic. Humans should have stayed on their little blue planet. More laughter followed. It was cruel and loud. But Vexthal raised one clawed hand, and the laughter stopped immediately. The commander's eyes remained fixed on Marcus. You reported this error to the administration? Yes, sir. 3 weeks ago. And nothing was done? No, sir. Vexthal felt a spark of anger, not at the human, but at his own staff. A cadet had reported a problem, and it had been ignored. This was unacceptable, but it did not change the situation. The rules of the academy were clear. Every cadet must demonstrate weapon proficiency. There were no exceptions. Not for shipping errors, not for administrative failures, not for anything. The rules are absolute, Vexthal said. You must demonstrate a weapon. If you cannot, you will be expelled. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Marcus remained at attention. His face showed nothing. Saithna leaned toward Crixall. He is finished. They will send him back to Earth before sunset. But Vexthal was not done speaking. His species, the Cathari, valued one thing above all others. They valued being tested. They believed that true warriors revealed themselves not in moments of comfort, but in moments of crisis. This human had been placed in an impossible situation through no fault of his own. The honorable response was to give him a chance, a small one, but a chance nonetheless. Cadet Cole, Vexthal said, I will give you 1 solar hour. Find a weapon, any weapon. Demonstrate lethality against standard combat targets. Do this and you pass. Fail to do this and you leave Nexus 7 forever. The hall erupted in confused chatter. This was unusual. This was against normal procedure. Some instructors frowned at their data pads, but none of them challenged the commander. Vexthal silenced the noise with a look. Your time begins now, human. Marcus Cole stood alone in the center of the training hall. 60 minutes. No weapon, no armor, no help from anyone. The other cadets began to disperse, moving to the observation areas around the edge of the hall. They wanted good seats for this. They wanted to watch the human fail. It would be entertaining. Something to laugh about for years to come. But Marcus did not move immediately. He stood perfectly still for almost a full minute. His eyes moved slowly around the room. He looked at the walls, the ceiling, the floor, the lights, the furniture. He looked at the desks and chairs that had been pushed to the side of the hall to make room for the examination. He looked at the maintenance closet in the corner. He looked at the lighting rigs hanging overhead. He looked at everything. Crixall watched from the observation area and laughed. What is he doing? Looking for a miracle? Perhaps he is praying to his human gods, Sithna replied with amusement. But Vexthal said nothing. He simply watched. And for reasons he could not explain, the scales on the back of his neck began to rise. Something was happening. Something was changing in the way the human stood, in the way he looked at the room around him. It was subtle, almost invisible. But Vexthal had fought in 17 wars across 9 star systems. He had killed more enemies than he could count. He had survived battles that had destroyed entire armies. And right now, in this moment, his warrior instincts were telling him something important. They were telling him to pay attention. Marcus Cole finally moved. He walked toward the pile of desks and chairs at the edge of the hall. His steps were calm and steady. His breathing was even. 58 minutes remained, and the human got to work. The training hall had become a theater. Every cadet found a place along the observation rails. They leaned forward with curiosity and cruel anticipation. This was going to be amusing. This was going to be the story they told for years, the day the human tried to fight without a weapon. Marcus Cole stood before a pile of furniture, standard academy equipment, metal desks with polymer tops, chairs made of lightweight alloy and synthetic fabric. Nothing special, nothing designed for combat, just ordinary objects used for ordinary purposes. He picked up a chair and examined it closely. He turned it over in his hands. He tested the weight. He felt the joints where the pieces connected. Crixal laughed from the observation area. Is he going to sit down and give up? Perhaps he will ask the targets to surrender peacefully. More laughter followed. Even some of the instructors smiled. But then Marcus did something unexpected. He placed the chair on the ground. He raised his right foot, and he brought his heel down hard on the point where the chair leg met the seat. The metal bent. The joint weakened. He struck again and again. Each blow was precise. Each impact targeted the same structural point. On the fourth strike, the leg broke free. Marcus held it up, testing its weight. It was about 2 feet long. Solid metal. One end was jagged and sharp where it had broken. The laughter stopped. Marcus moved quickly now. He broke a second leg from the chair, then a third. He had 3 metal rods in less than 2 minutes. Simple, primitive, but solid. He turned to the desks next. The desktops were made of reinforced polymer, designed to resist damage from careless students. Marcus flipped a desk over and studied its construction. He found the seam where the top connected to the frame. He wedged one of his metal rods into the gap and used it as a lever. The top cracked. He hit it with his palm, and it shattered into several pieces. Some were long and curved. Others were short and pointed. He selected the sharpest pieces and set them aside. Scythna stopped smiling. Her scales shifted from red to a confused yellow. What is he doing? No one answered her. No one knew. Marcus moved to the maintenance closet in the corner of the hall. It was unlocked because no one had thought to secure it. Why would they? It contained only cleaning supplies and basic repair tools. He opened the door and looked inside. His eyes scanned the shelves quickly. Industrial solvent for cleaning stubborn stains. A fire suppression canister for emergency situations. Electrical cable used for minor repairs. Basic hand tools. Fabric sheets used for polishing. He took the solvent. He took the canister. He took a long coil of cable. He took several fabric sheets. Brongar shifted uncomfortably. The massive Gorvan had never seen anyone look at cleaning supplies with such intensity. It was like watching a predator select its prey. This is strange, he rumbled. I do not like this. Marcus returned to the center of the hall with his collected materials. 45 minutes remained on the clock. He sat down on the floor and began to work. First, he took 2 of the metal chair legs and wrapped them together with electrical cable. He wound the cable tight, creating a solid binding. Then he attached a third leg to the end, letting it swing free. More cable secured the connection but allowed movement. A flail. He had made a flail. A simple weapon from ancient human history, designed to strike with devastating force. The weighted end could swing in unpredictable arcs. It could wrap around defenses. It could deliver crushing blows. The observers fell completely silent. Next, Marcus took the sharpest polymer shards from the broken desktop. He selected one piece that was about 8 inches long with a natural point. He wrapped fabric around the base to create a handle. He tested the grip. He made small adjustments. A blade, crude but functional, sharp enough to pierce soft targets, strong enough to survive multiple strikes. Commander Vexthal leaned forward in his seat. His 4 eyes were fully open. His scales had risen along his back. This was not what he had expected. This was something new, something he had never seen before. Marcus was not done. He picked up the fire suppression canister and examined its construction. It was designed to release a cloud of chemical foam when triggered. The foam would smother flames and remove oxygen from the air. But the canister itself was pressurized. The chemicals inside were highly reactive. He found the release valve. He found the trigger mechanism. He understood how it worked. Then he took the industrial solvent. He read the warning labels carefully. Flammable, corrosive, keep away from heat sources. He smiled. Using cable and fabric, he attached the solvent container to the canister. He modified the trigger mechanism with a piece of bent metal. He created a simple delay system using twisted fabric that would burn at a predictable rate. An incendiary device. Not sophisticated, not pretty, but effective. The hall had become completely quiet. No one was laughing anymore. No one was making jokes. The cadets stared at the human with new eyes. They watched him work with the focus of a master craftsman. Every movement was deliberate. Every choice was purposeful. He was not guessing. He was not hoping. He knew exactly what he was doing. 35 minutes remained. Marcus stood and gathered his creations. In one hand, he held his improvised flail, the cable-wrapped chain swinging gently with its weighted end. On his belt, he had secured the polymer blade in a makeshift sheath of wrapped fabric. In his other hand, he carried the incendiary device carefully. He also had 2 remaining metal rods tucked into his belt. Backup weapons, throwing implements, tools for unexpected situations. He looked at Commander Vexthal and nodded once. "I am ready for the combat demonstration, sir." The silence stretched on. The instructors exchanged uncertain glances. The cadets shifted nervously. Vexthal rose from his seat slowly. He walked to the edge of the observation platform and looked down at the human. Really looked at him. This creature had no claws, no fangs, no natural armor. His species had evolved as prey animals on a dangerous world. By all logic, by all reason, humans should have been extinct millions of years ago. But they were not extinct. They had survived. They had grown. They had built ships that crossed the stars. And now Vexthal understood why. This human had looked at garbage and seen weapons. He had looked at furniture and seen tools of war. He had looked at cleaning supplies and seen explosives. His mind worked differently from any species Vexthal had ever encountered. The commander felt something he rarely experienced, something that made his scales flatten against his body. He felt the first small stirring of respect. "Activate the combat drones," Vexthal commanded. His voice was quieter than before. "Standard difficulty, 3 units." An instructor at the control panel hesitated. "Sir, standard difficulty? For an improvised weapons test? Perhaps we should lower—" "Standard difficulty," Vexthal repeated firmly. "If the human wants to prove himself, let him do it properly." The instructor nodded and entered the commands. 3 panels opened in the walls of the training hall. 3 combat drones emerged on silent, hovering engines. They were armored. They were armed with stun weapons. They were programmed to fight, to evade, to adapt. These were the same drones used to test graduating cadets. Cadets with real weapons, cadets with years of training, cadets with natural advantages that the human did not possess. Marcus looked at the drones. He looked at his improvised weapons. He took a deep breath. Then he moved forward to meet them. The 3 combat drones spread out across the training hall. Their sensors swept back and forth, analyzing their target. Red lights blinked on their armored bodies. They were designed to test the best warriors the galaxy had to offer. They had never faced a human before. Marcus stood in the center of the hall with his flail in his right hand. The weighted end swung slowly in a small circle. His eyes tracked all 3 drones at once. His breathing was steady and controlled. The first drone attacked. It came from his left side, moving fast on its hovering engines. Its stun weapon charged with a high-pitched whine. One hit from that weapon would drop Marcus to the ground and end the test immediately. But Marcus was already moving. He did not run away from the drone. He ran toward it. The cadets in the observation area gasped. This was insane. This was suicide. No sane warrior charged directly at an armed opponent with nothing but a piece of furniture. The drone fired. Marcus dropped to his knees and slid across the smooth floor. The stun blast passed over his head by inches. Before the drone could adjust its aim, he was already inside its attack range. He swung the flail upward in a vicious arc. The weighted end whipped around and tangled in the drone's sensor array. Marcus pulled hard. The drone jerked sideways, its balance disrupted. In that moment of confusion, Marcus drew his polymer blade and drove it into the drone's primary optical sensor. The sharp point punched through the lens and into the circuits behind. Sparks flew. The drone's movements became erratic. But it was not dead. Its backup systems activated. It tried to retreat and recalibrate. Marcus did not give it time. He planted his feet and yanked the flail with all his strength. The weighted end ripped free from the sensor array, taking pieces of metal with it. In the same motion, he swung the weapon in a full circle and brought it crashing down on the drone's central processing unit. The impact was brutal. The drone's armor cracked. Its hover engine sputtered. It crashed to the floor and lay still. One down, two remaining. The hall was utterly silent. No one moved. No one spoke. They had just watched a human destroy a military-grade combat drone with weapons made from furniture. The other two drones reacted immediately. Their combat programs had observed the first attack. They had analyzed the human's techniques. They adapted. The drones separated, moving to opposite sides of the hall. They would attack from two directions at once. They would give the human no chance to focus on a single target. Marcus understood their strategy instantly. He had studied tactics from 100 different human cultures. Flanking maneuvers were as old as war itself. He had a plan. He ran toward the second drone, making it seem like he was committing fully to an attack. The drone prepared to receive him, its stun weapon locked onto his approaching form. But Marcus was not actually attacking. He was positioning. At the last moment, he dropped and rolled to the side. He came up near one of the broken desks he had dismantled earlier. In one smooth motion, he grabbed a jagged piece of polymer and hurled it at the drone. The throw was not meant to damage. It was meant to blind. The polymer shard cracked against the drone's optical sensor. It did not break through, but it left a smear of material across the lens. The drone's vision became partially obscured. While the drone tried to clear its sensor, Marcus pulled the industrial solvent from his belt. He had kept a small amount separate from his incendiary device. He opened the container and threw the contents directly at the drone's optical array. The corrosive liquid splashed across the sensor. It began eating into the lens immediately. The drone's vision went from partially blocked to completely destroyed. Blind and confused, the drone fired its stun weapon randomly. The blast went wide, striking walls and floor. It was dangerous but no longer accurate. Marcus closed the distance with terrifying speed. His flail swung in a horizontal arc and crashed into the drone's main body. The impact dented the armor and sent the drone spinning. Before it could recover, Marcus struck again. And again. On the third blow, something inside the drone broke with a loud crack. Its hover engines failed. It dropped to the floor and tried to rise on emergency servos. Marcus brought his boot down hard on its central processor. The drone died with a shower of sparks. Two down, one remaining. But the third drone had used this time wisely. While Marcus fought its companion, it had moved to an elevated position near the ceiling. Its weapons were fully charged. Its sensors had tracked every move Marcus made. It had learned his patterns. When Marcus looked up, the drone fired. The stun blast caught him in the shoulder. Pain exploded through his body. His left arm went numb. He stumbled but did not fall. The drone fired again. Marcus dove behind a pile of debris from the broken furniture. The blast missed his head by a fraction. His heart was pounding. His breath came in short gasps. The pain in his shoulder was intense, but he was still moving, still thinking, still fighting. The drone descended slowly, moving to get a clear line of fire. It was being cautious now. It had seen what the human could do at close range. It wanted to finish this fight from a distance. Marcus knew he had one chance. One moment. If he failed, the examination was over. He grabbed his incendiary device, the fire suppression canister modified with industrial solvent, the trigger mechanism he had created, the delay fuse of twisted fabric. He lit the fuse with a spark from two pieces of metal struck together. The fabric began to burn, slowly eating toward the trigger. Then he threw the device, not at the drone. That would be too obvious. The drone would see it coming and evade. Instead, he threw it at the wall beside the drone. The device hit the wall and bounced. The drone's sensors tracked the object, but calculated it was not a threat. It was not on an intercept course. The fuse reached the trigger. The fire suppression canister released its pressurized contents. At the same moment, the industrial solvent ignited. The combination created a superheated chemical cloud that erupted outward in all directions. The drone was engulfed. Its systems were designed to handle many things: energy weapons, physical impacts, electronic warfare. But they were not designed to handle a sudden burst of corrosive, flammable chemicals at extreme temperatures. Its armor melted in places. Its sensors overloaded from the heat. Its circuits burned. Its hover engines choked on the chemical fumes and died. The drone fell from the air and crashed to the floor. It twitched once, twice, and then stopped moving. 3 down, 3 destroyed. Marcus stood in the center of the training hall. His left arm hung limp at his side. His face was covered in sweat and dust and small spots of blood from flying debris. His improvised weapons were broken and bent, but he was standing. And the drones were dead. The silence in the hall stretched on for what felt like an eternity. Every cadet stared at the human with expressions of complete disbelief. The instructors had stopped taking notes. Their data pads hung forgotten in their hands. Commander Vexthal rose slowly from his seat. His 4 orange eyes were fixed on Marcus Cole. His scales had risen fully along his back and neck. His claws had extended without him realizing it. He had commanded warriors for over 60 years. He had trained the best fighters in the galaxy. He had seen techniques and abilities from dozens of species. He had never seen anything like this. This human had taken garbage and made weapons. He had taken furniture and made tools of death. He had destroyed 3 combat drones that were designed to test elite warriors. And he had done it all in less than 5 minutes. Vexthal looked at the smoking remains of the drones. He looked at the broken furniture scattered across the floor. He looked at the small, soft, clawless human standing in the middle of the destruction. And for the first time in many, many years, Commander Vexthal felt something he had almost forgotten. He felt fear, not fear of the human himself. Marcus Cole was injured and exhausted. He was no threat to the commander, but fear of what humans might become, fear of what they might do, fear of a species that looked at the entire universe and saw only weapons waiting to be used. The hall remained silent as Vexthal walked down from the observation platform. His footsteps echoed in the quiet. Every eye followed him as he approached the human. Marcus stood at attention despite his injury. He looked up at the massive Cathari commander and waited. Vexthal stopped directly in front of him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then the commander asked a question, just one question, the only question that mattered. How? Commander Vexthal stood before the human and waited for an answer. The question hung in the air between them. How? Such a small word. Such an enormous meaning. Marcus Cole looked up at the massive Cathari warrior. His left arm was still numb from the stun blast. His body ached from the fight, but his eyes were clear and calm. Permission to speak freely, sir. Vexthal nodded slowly. Granted. Marcus took a breath. When he spoke, his voice carried across the silent training hall. Every cadet heard him, every instructor. Every being present would remember his words for the rest of their lives. Your species has natural weapons, Commander. Claws that can tear through metal, scales that can stop blades, strength that can crush stone. The Vryn have venom that can kill in seconds. The Gervan have bodies like living tanks. Every species I have seen at this academy has some gift from evolution, some natural advantage. He paused and looked around the hall at the watching aliens. Humans have nothing, Crixal snorted from the observation area. We noticed. But Marcus was not finished. He turned back to Commander Vexthal with something new in his eyes. Something hard. Something ancient. We have no claws, no fangs, no armor, no venom. Our skin can be cut by almost anything. Our bodies are fragile. We are slower than half the predators on our own planet, weaker than most, less deadly than all. He held up his hands. They were soft, pink, vulnerable. By every measure you use to judge warriors, humans should be extinct. We should have been eaten by predators millions of years ago. We should have frozen in the cold or burned in the heat. We should have starved or drowned or simply disappeared like countless other species on our world. His voice grew stronger, more certain. But we did not disappear. We survived. We grew. We conquered our entire planet. We built ships that crossed the void between stars. We found you. And now we are here, standing in your academy, training beside species that could kill us with their bare hands. Vexthal listened without moving. His four eyes never left the human's face. How? Marcus asked, echoing the commander's own question. You want to know how? I will tell you. When the universe does not give you weapons, you make your own. When nature does not give you claws, you sharpen rocks. When evolution does not give you armor, you tan animal hides. When your body cannot survive the cold, you learn to make fire. He pointed at the destroyed drones behind him, at the broken furniture, at the improvised weapons scattered across the floor. That is how humans think, Commander. We look at the world around us and we ask one question. How can I use this? A rock becomes a hammer. A stick becomes a spear. A vine becomes a rope. Bones become needles. Shells become tools. Everything can be turned into something useful. Something deadly. Something that helps us survive. The hall was completely silent. No one breathed. No one moved. Your cadets laughed at me because I had no weapon, Marcus continued. They thought I was helpless. They thought I was prey. But they made a mistake. A mistake that has killed countless enemies of humanity throughout our history. He looked directly at Crixall. The young Cathari shrank back slightly. They forgot that a human is never unarmed. Never. Because to a human, the entire universe is a weapon waiting to be used. The words settled over the hall like a heavy blanket. Marcus turned back to Commander Vexthal and stood at attention despite his injuries. That is how, sir. That is how humans survive. That is how we fight. That is how we win. For a long moment, Vexthal said nothing. His scales slowly flattened against his body. His claws retracted. Something changed in his expression. Something subtle but profound. Then the commander of the Interstellar Combat Academy did something that none of his students had ever seen. Something that made them question everything they thought they knew. He bowed his head. It was not a deep bow. It was not submissive. It was the bow of acknowledgement, the bow that Cathari gave only to those they considered equals, those they respected, those who had earned their place through merit and blood. The cadets gasped. The instructors stared in disbelief. This could not be happening. The commander was bowing to the human, to the prey, to the weakest being in the room. But Vexthal did not care what they thought. He had fought in 17 wars. He had trained thousands of warriors. He knew how to recognize something valuable, something dangerous, something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy. He had just seen the future of warfare, and it did not have claws. Cadet Cole, Vexthal said as he raised his head, you passed the examination. A murmur ran through the crowd. Some cadets looked angry. Others looked confused. A few, the smartest ones, looked thoughtful, but the commander was not finished. More than that, he continued, his voice rising so everyone could hear, you have demonstrated a form of combat thinking that does not exist in our curriculum, a way of seeing the battlefield that none of our species possess naturally. You have shown us something we did not know we lacked. He turned to face the assembled cadets and instructors. For 200 years, this academy has taught warriors how to master their natural weapons, how to perfect the techniques of their species, how to fight in the ways that evolution designed them to fight. But we have never taught improvisation. We have never taught our students to see weapons in ordinary objects. We have never taught them to think like humans. His four eyes swept across the crowd. This is a failure, our failure, and it ends today. The cadets looked at each other in confusion. What was the commander saying? Vexthal turned back to Marcus. Cadet Cole, I am promoting you to the rank of junior instructor, effective immediately. You will develop a new course for this academy, advanced improvisation and adaptive combat. You will teach our students to see the universe the way humans see it. Marcus blinked. Of all the outcomes he had imagined, this was not one of them. Sir, you have knowledge that we do not possess, Vexthal said simply. Knowledge that could save lives, knowledge that could win wars. It would be foolish to waste it on cadet-level training when it could benefit the entire academy. He extended one clawed hand in the human gesture of agreement. He had learned it from the cultural database. It seemed appropriate now. Do you accept this responsibility, Instructor Cole? Marcus looked at the offered hand. He looked at the commander's face. He looked at the stunned cadets watching from the observation area. Crixol's scales had turned pale with shock. Sithana's colors were shifting rapidly between emotions she could not identify. Brongar simply stared with his mouth slightly open. A slow smile crossed Marcus's face. He reached out and clasped the commander's clawed hand with his own soft, vulnerable, dangerous fingers. I accept, sir. Vexthal nodded once. Then he turned to address the hall one final time. Class, your new advanced improvisation instructor begins teaching tomorrow. I expect every one of you to attend his first lesson. You will pay attention. You will take notes. You will learn. He paused and looked at Marcus with something that might have been amusement. Because the humans fight like nothing else in this galaxy. They see weapons where we see garbage. They see tools where we see furniture. They see opportunity where we see empty rooms. His voice dropped lower. Every being in the hall leaned forward to hear. And if we ever have to fight against them, we will need every advantage we can get. The words settled over the crowd like a warning, like a prophecy, like a promise of things to come. Marcus Cole, human, former cadet, now instructor, looked out at the aliens who had mocked him for months. He saw their new expressions: fear, respect, uncertainty, curiosity, good. Tomorrow he would teach them about rocks, about sticks, about fire, about the million ways that humans had found to turn nothing into something, to turn weakness into strength, to turn the entire universe into a weapon. They had laughed at him because humans had no natural weapons. They would learn that this was exactly what made humans the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Because a creature that is born with claws will always rely on claws. A species with venom will always depend on venom. They become predictable, limited, trapped by their own evolution. But humans had no such limitations. Humans had only their minds, their creativity, their endless, terrifying ability to look at anything and see potential. The examination was over. The lesson was just beginning, and the galaxy would never be the same.